Hi everyone, my name's Jordan and welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing a series review of the Liveship Traders series by Robin Hobb. This includes Ship of Magic, Mad Ship, and Ship of Destiny. I kind of flew through this series because I was listening to them as audiobooks at work. And man, this is definitely being added to my favorite fantasy series of all time. Robin Hobb is a genius, and her character work is some of the best character work I have ever seen in fantasy, but I will get more into that later. First, the plot. So this book follows this family that owns a live ship, and basically a live ship is a ship that is made out of this magical wood called wizard wood that gives the ship basically life. But in order to quicken the ship, 3 generations of people within this family have to die on the ship. Just one person from each generation, but from 3 successive generations, one person has to die on the ship. And this basically imbues the ship with memories of the family and gives it life. They're better at sailing, they can sail tougher waters. So it follows this family that has a live ship, and the 3rd person in that line of generations is about to die, and his daughter thinks that she will inherit the ship. However, he ends up leaving it to his oldest daughter and her husband, and so her husband becomes the captain. What follows is a lot of politics and family drama trying to get this ship back. We follow a few other point of views as well, such as a pirate captain, and we follow some points of view of these serpents that live in the water. The plot was not the main focus of the books. I feel like the characters and their growth was definitely the main focus. However, the plot was still expertly crafted. The politics were slowly rolled out throughout all 3 books so that you never really felt overwhelmed or intimidated by them, and you just kind of really understood everything that was going on. You really wanted these characters to succeed in what they were trying to do. I wanted Althea to get her ship back. I wanted Kenneth to get his comeuppance. I think that her pacing of the plot throughout all 3 books was just very well done. It was not super fast paced because these books are long. The audiobooks were all at least 34 hours. I think they were all around 35 hours long. So these are big books. And so it can get overwhelming quickly. There could be a lot of info dumping in long books like that where it's just kind of slogs. But I think that Robin Hobb did an incredible job of slowly providing us all the information we needed and medium pacing the plot throughout. And I think that really made it to where I never felt bored. I wasn't ever ugh, we're back at this again. Everything felt necessary and interesting. I think that all of the different plot lines coming together towards the end was really rewarding. Basically, the Vestrit family gets split up, and they're all kind of all over the place. And towards the end of the books, they all kind of meet back together, as well as the other points of view. Everyone ends up meeting together by the end of the 3rd book. That's not really a spoiler, but it just felt so rewarding to finally see all of those plot lines tie together, because some of them felt a little disparate from the rest. Throughout a lot of the books, you were just kind of following 2 different people in 2 different areas of time, and then getting to see that all come together was just so good. Now for the characters were the highlight of this story. Robin Hobb does an incredible job of making you feel, whether it be good or bad, so much about these characters. The amount of hate I had for Kyle Haven and throughout all of the books was just so deep. I feel like with Kenneth, I was honestly so confused all the time about how I felt about him until the very end of the series, because it was that weird dichotomy of being a really bad person but accidentally doing a lot of good. So it was very weird to parse out my feelings for Kenneth. I loved the Vestrit family. At the beginning of the books, Malta is just really annoying, and then she slowly grows on you throughout all of the books, especially in Mad Ship. And that was just so surprising, because I was how is she gonna make me ever feel for this character, because she's so annoying and she does it. So I think the progression of all of the character arcs felt so real and well thought out. I never thought that people were doing things out of character. I think the length of the books really added to that. But because we were given so much time with each character, I always felt like they were doing things in an appropriate manner to the character development up to that point, if that makes sense. I never felt like people were doing things that were wildly out of character or that their character arcs were like skipping too much or anything like that. We really got to spend time with each character. I think my favorite points of view to read from in the books were Althea, Ronica, and Kenneth. Althea is just like the heroine of the book, and I really liked her points of view. I liked that she was trying to learn who she was herself, as well as what she wants in life and things like that. And I think her fight to get her ship back was really admirable. I liked Ronica's points of view because she was definitely older than a lot of the other points of view, so we kind of got a more mature take on everything going on. But I also felt like we learned a lot of the politics from her points of view. And because she had so much understanding of all of those politics, it made it very easy to digest. And then Kenneth, like I said earlier, his points of view were just really interesting for me because I was constantly trying to figure out if I liked him as a character. But also a lot of the weird, intense action happened around him. So you always knew it was going to be an entertaining chapter when his came up. Two other points of view that I felt like their character arcs were like wild throughout all of the books were the two main live ships we followed, Paragon and the Vestrit family ship, whose name I cannot remember right now. I felt like their character arcs, as they started as just like, well, the Vestrit family ship was just like, she gets quickened in the beginning of the first book, so you get to see her character growth from like basically an infant ship to where she ends up at the end of the third book. And then Paragon going from like just a mad ship to where he ends up at the end of the book. It was just like so wild. And a lot of the stuff around Paragon, you get some really crazy reveals by the end of the third book that I would never have guessed. There's so much throughout the first two books that you just really have no idea what's going on. Intentionally, there's so much, like, especially like around like all of the points of view from the serpents, all of the like serpent chapters. A lot of people say those are their least favorite chapters because you just don't even know what's happening. But I loved that. I loved that like reward that I felt after I finished the third book of being like, it makes sense now. Yeah, I think rewarding is really like the main adjective with this series. I felt like everything was so rewarding by the end of the third book. Just like all of the plot lines wrapping up, all of the character arcs coming to fruition, like all of it just felt so well thought out. I cannot imagine the planning process that went into these books. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like the Stormlight Archive, like that epic scale where there's just little Easter eggs hidden throughout, and like you have to reread it over and over to really grasp all of those things that you missed in the previous read-throughs. So this is definitely a series I'm hoping I'll get to reread in the next few years, just so I can pick up on those little things. But I just think that this series is like one of the best series I've ever read. Farseer I loved, and this one's better. So I hope that just keeps being the theme as I read Robin Hobb's books. I hope like each series gets progressively better and better, because right now I don't know how she can top this one. I'm also curious how this series is going to tie into Fitz's story. I believe that the rest of the series go back to all being with Fitz. I'm not 100% sure on that. And this is the only series that has no Fitz. So I know it's all in the same world, and they mention the 6 duchies in this book. So I'm very interested to see how this series ties in with everything else. I have a theory, and if you've read these books, DM me, because I have a theory of one of the characters that I think is going to appear in Fitz's life. It's probably pretty obvious. It's not really like a really far-fetched hypothesis, but I think I know which character is going to show up in Fitz's life, and I'm very, very interested for it. I think that my favorite book of the series is probably Mad Ship. I think that the third one, Ship of Destiny, was the most rewarding, but I think Mad Ship is where we got some of the most intense character growth and intense plot. I feel like things were really kicking off in Mad Ship. The first one was a lot of like setup for getting to know the characters and the world. which was definitely necessary because it is a very complex world with a lot of complex characters. And then I think the second book was like really amped up. And then the third book was all of those plot lines and character arcs that we've established in the first 2 books really coming to a head. So while all of the books were like phenomenal, I think Madship was definitely my favorite. Basically, I think everyone should be reading Robin Hobb. I think that while I read Farseer first and then I read Liveship Traders, I think you could really read either of them first and like swap it. Because they aren't about the same characters, I think you could start with either of them. I do think that the rest of them are pretty chronological, so I think you have to read the rest of them in the proper order, but I think for your first series, you could read this one or Farseer. Both are great. Both are very different vibes. Farseer is definitely more like, feels more like medieval fantasy with like a castle and a king and magic and like a fantasy traveling, you know. And this one's like more ship-based, piratey, like just a very different vibe. So whichever vibe you feel like you're gonna gel with more, I would say start with that one. But honestly, both books are incredible. So I would say read both series because they're both worth it. I am so excited to continue reading Robin Hobb's books. I just want to finish like all of the Realm of the Elderlings ASAP. I am so grateful to BookTube and the book community because if I had never found the book community, I would probably have never picked up these books. I mean, if you just like look at the covers, they're like so boring. They're the corniest fantasy covers, and I've always been very intimidated about old school fantasy books. I've always just felt like they're not for me. Just preconceived notion. I hadn't ever really tried them, and the book community really opened my eyes to a lot of great older fantasy, and this is up there. This isn't like super old by any means. I think Liveship Traders was written like in the 90s, so it's really not that old, but I still really only read a more like contemporary fantasy, so definitely grateful to the book community for opening my eyes to a much larger swath of fantasy novels because this series and this author are incredible. So really looking forward to finishing up the Realm of the Elderlings. I believe next up is... I do not remember what series is next. But I'm excited for it. Whatever it is, I'm really excited to get back into Fitz's world and see what Fitz is doing after the end of the last Farseer book because that was also a wild ending. And I was of the minority opinion that the third book in the Farseer trilogy was the best. Most people think the second one is the best. But I think the third, we got so much more magic and lore, and I love that. So anyway, this isn't a video about the Farseer trilogy, so Liveship Traders trilogy, incredible. Please read it. So that is the end of the video. Please let me know down below if you've read this series or the Farseer trilogy and what you thought of it. And if you haven't, what are you doing? Like, go read Robin Hobb ASAP. Add her to your list now. If you liked this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, thank you guys.